Have you ever had one of those moments where you catch yourself doing something that doesn't really serve you anymore, but you keep doing it anyway because it's familiar? Maybe it's a habit, a thought, or even a way you respond to people. And afterward, you think, why am I still doing this? I know better. If that feels even a little bit familiar, you're definitely not alone. Most of us carry around patterns we picked up years ago, sometimes decades ago, that we never stop to question. And those patterns can quietly shape the way we live, how much peace we feel, and even how much joy we allow ourselves to experience. That's why today, I want to talk to you about something simple but powerful, the things we need to stop doing if we want a better life. Not because you're doing anything wrong, but because a better life often starts by letting go, not by adding more. Sometimes the biggest transformations come from small shifts, tiny course corrections that can lead to big emotional clarity and a whole lot more space for happiness. And honestly, life already throws enough challenges at us. We don't need to make things harder by clinging to habits that drain our energy or steal our peace. Think about the last time you felt overwhelmed or stuck. It might have been an argument that left you tense for hours, a worry you carried long after the situation ended, or one of those days when you just didn't feel like yourself. Often, buried underneath those moments is something we're holding on to, a thought, a belief, a behavior, that keeps us from feeling lighter and living with intention. And the truth is, a better life isn't about reinventing everything at once. It starts with just one shift. Then another. And another. Like opening the windows in a stuffy room. Bit by bit, the air clears. So in this video, we're going to talk about some of the biggest things people do, without even realizing it, that hold them back. And more importantly, how you can stop doing these things and create a life that feels calmer, clearer, and genuinely more fulfilling. These aren't dramatic changes or unrealistic expectations. They're small mental and emotional adjustments anyone can make, no matter their age, background, or current situation. My hope is that as you listen, something clicks for you, something that reminds you that it's never too late to make your life a little easier, a little brighter, a little more yours. Let's start with one of the biggest habits that quietly drains your happiness, carrying the weight of other people's expectations. This one sneaks up on almost everyone. You might not even notice it until you realize you're making choices not because you want to, but because you're afraid of disappointing someone else. Maybe it's family. Maybe it's friends. Maybe it's society as a whole whispering, you should do this, or you should be that. The problem with living this way is that it slowly pushes your true desires into a corner. You end up living a life that feels like it belongs to everyone but you. And the tough part is that expectations don't disappear as we get older, they often get heavier. People assume you should act a certain way, think a certain way, or make decisions based on what's comfortable for them. But the moment you stop living for other people's approval, something incredible happens, you start to feel lighter. You start to feel more honest with yourself. You start waking up with more clarity because you're no longer asking, what do they want, but instead, what do I want? And the beautiful thing is, you're allowed to ask that question at any age. You're allowed to choose yourself without apology. A better life begins when you stop letting other people's opinions have more authority than your own voice. And it doesn't have to be a big announcement. You don't have to push anyone away or declare that you're changing your life. It can start quietly. Maybe you take a step back before agreeing to something. Maybe you allow yourself to say no. Maybe you choose a hobby or a routine or a decision simply because it brings you joy. These small acts of self-honoring are like tiny seeds that eventually grow into confidence, contentment, and a sense of freedom you might not have felt in years. Now, once you start letting go of other people's expectations, the next thing that becomes important is releasing the habit of constantly replaying the past. This is another thing so many people do without realizing how much it affects their day-to-day life. It's easy to get stuck in old memories, the things that went wrong, the decisions you regret, the moments you wish you could change. Sometimes the past plays in your mind like a loop, especially late at night or during quiet moments. And even though thinking about it doesn't fix anything, it still takes up space in your heart. But here's the thing, you can't create a better life if you're constantly revisiting a version of yourself you've already outgrown. You're not meant to live in old chapters. You're meant to learn from them and keep moving. Holding on to past mistakes, past conversations, or past versions of yourself doesn't protect you. It just weighs you down. And sometimes the hardest part isn't letting go of the past itself, it's letting go of the belief that you have to carry it forever. Imagine how much energy you'd have if you weren't replaying old frustrations or beating yourself up for things you didn't know back then. You've lived, you've learned, and you're still here. That means you get to move forward. You get to rewrite your story with more wisdom and more self-compassion. And if you need permission to leave the past where it belongs, consider this your permission slip. As you start releasing these old habits, living for others and holding on to yesterday, you create space for something new, something lighter. And that brings us to another pattern a lot of people struggle with, doubting your own worth. This one slips into your thoughts in subtle ways. Maybe you compare yourself to others. Maybe you feel like you're not accomplishing enough. Maybe you underestimate the value you bring to the people around you. But you deserve to feel confident in who you are. You deserve to take up space. You deserve to believe that your presence matters, because it does more than you realize. And when you start trusting your worth, even just a little more each day, your life shifts in ways that feel both powerful and gentle. You speak up more. You set boundaries. You choose things that make you feel alive, not drained. You stop settling for less than you deserve. And eventually, you begin to feel more grounded in who you are, not who you think you should be. Now that we've started uncovering these patterns, living for others, replaying the past, doubting your worth, it naturally leads us into the next part of this journey, where we continue exploring the kinds of habits that quietly shape your happiness and how to gently release the ones that no longer serve you. And as you start noticing these patterns more clearly, something interesting happens. You become more aware of how much of your emotional energy has been tied up in things that don't actually help you grow. This awareness is powerful, because it gently nudges you toward making choices that support the life you really want. And one of the choices that makes a bigger difference than most people realize is letting go of the habit of overthinking. This might be something you've dealt with for years, maybe without even calling it by that name. It's that constant analyzing, replaying, predicting, worrying, second-guessing, spinning in circles trying to figure out every possible outcome before anything even happens. Overthinking is like carrying a backpack filled with rocks. You might get used to the weight, but that doesn't mean it's not exhausting. And the worst part is, most of the things we overthink never actually happen. But they steal energy as if they already have. You might find yourself lying awake at night wondering, did I say the right thing? What if this goes wrong? What if that person misunderstood me? And in those moments, your mind becomes a place of chaos instead of clarity. The truth is, you don't have to solve everything in your head before you take a single step. Life isn't meant to be lived entirely in your mind. It's meant to be experienced, felt, explored. When you let go of the need to mentally control every possible scenario, you give yourself permission to breathe. You allow life to unfold instead of trying to push it into a perfect shape. Imagine trusting yourself enough to say, "I'll handle things as they come," and actually believing it. That alone can change the way you move through your days. And once you start releasing the grip of overthinking, something else becomes much clearer: the importance of letting go of unnecessary negativity. Not just the negativity that comes from other people, but the negativity we sometimes create without realizing it. Maybe it shows up as constant self-criticism, or assuming the worst in situations, or expecting things to go wrong simply because they have before. This kind of mindset can slowly drain the joy out of even the simplest moments. But imagine what would happen if you stopped feeding that negativity. Imagine choosing to focus on what's going right instead of dwelling on what might go wrong. Imagine being kinder to yourself in the moments when you feel discouraged. This doesn't mean pretending everything is perfect or ignoring real challenges. It simply means you stop allowing negativity to be your default reaction. You give yourself permission to see possibilities, not just problems. You make room for hope, curiosity, and even excitement, things that naturally make your life feel better from the inside out. And this shift becomes even more powerful once you stop doing something else many people fall into without noticing: comparing your journey to someone else's. This one can sneak up on you, especially in a world where everyone seems to be showing off the best parts of their lives. You might find yourself looking at someone else's achievements or lifestyle and thinking, "I'm behind," or "Why haven't I done that?" But comparisons are incredibly unfair, because you're measuring yourself against a version of someone else that isn't even complete. Every person on this planet has their own struggles, their own wins, their own timing. And your life isn't supposed to look like anyone else's. Your path is uniquely yours. The experiences that shaped you, the challenges you overcame, the lessons you learned, they're part of your story, not anyone else's. When you stop comparing, you start appreciating where you are right now. You begin to see your progress instead of your perceived shortcomings. And you finally allow yourself to move forward at a pace that feels right for you. Once you stop comparing, you also free yourself from the pressure to rush through life. And that brings us to another habit worth releasing: the need to constantly stay busy just to feel productive or valuable. So many people fall into this trap without realizing it. They fill their schedules with tasks, commitments, obligations, and activities not because they truly want to, but because stillness makes them uncomfortable. They feel guilty when they rest. They feel anxious when they slow down. They feel like they're not doing enough unless they're exhausted. But staying busy is not the same as living a meaningful life. In fact, when you slow down, you often discover things you overlooked while rushing. You notice what actually matters. You reconnect with the parts of yourself that get lost when you're constantly moving. Rest isn't laziness. Stillness isn't unproductive. Quiet moments are where clarity grows. And if you want a better life, learning to slow down isn't a luxury, it's essential. You deserve moments of peace without feeling like you have to earn them. As you start breaking free from these habits, overthinking, feeding negativity, comparing yourself to others, and keeping yourself endlessly busy, you begin to feel something shift within you. It's like clearing out a cluttered room. Suddenly there's space to breathe. Space to think. Space to be. And once that space opens up, your intuition becomes louder. Your priorities become clearer. Your life begins to feel like something you're actively living instead of something you're constantly reacting to. And with this clarity comes the ability to make choices that truly support your well-being. Choices that reflect who you are now, not who you were years ago. Choices that allow you to grow, evolve, and create a life that feels meaningful. Because when you strip away the habits that hold you back, you begin discovering habits that lift you up. And that's where the next part of this journey naturally leads, toward understanding the remaining patterns that quietly shape your happiness and learning how to release them so you can step more fully into the life you want. And as all these pieces begin falling into place, the clarity, the stillness, the release of old habits, you start to notice another pattern that plays an even bigger role in shaping your daily life, the tendency to hold on to people who drain your energy. This one is tough, not because you don't recognize when someone is exhausting to be around, but because your heart is big. You care. You want to support others. You want to be there for the people you love. And that's beautiful, but it becomes a problem when it comes at the cost of your own well-being. You don't have to keep giving your energy to people who never give any back. You don't have to justify mistreatment just because you've known someone for a long time. And you don't have to shrink yourself to maintain relationships that only take and never replenish. Letting go of these kinds of connections doesn't mean you're cruel or heartless. It simply means you're finally choosing peace over chaos, clarity over confusion, and self-respect over exhaustion. The moment you create distance from draining people, something powerful happens. You make room for healthier connections. People who uplift you, support you, listen to you, and value your presence. You deserve relationships that feel mutual, steady, and nourishing. And even if it feels uncomfortable at first, choosing better people for your life is one of the most loving things you can do for yourself. And as your relationships begin to shift, the next thing you may notice is the habit of saying yes even when you really want to say no. This is another pattern that can quietly chip away at your happiness. You might say yes to avoid conflict, to keep the peace, or to avoid disappointing someone. But every time you say yes when your heart is saying no, you abandon a little piece of yourself. You stretch yourself too thin. You take on responsibilities that don't belong to you. You push your own needs to the very bottom of the list. Learning to say no is not selfish, it's necessary. It's a boundary that protects your time, energy, and emotional balance. A better life isn't built on doing more, it's often built on doing less, intentionally. And when you start honoring your limits, you begin to feel more aligned with yourself. You start making decisions based on what feels right instead of what feels expected. And the more you practice this, the easier it becomes. Eventually, no feels like a natural part of taking care of yourself, not something you have to justify. As these habits fall away, the draining relationships, the forced yes, the unrealistic expectations, you begin to uncover one more pattern that deeply influences your happiness. The belief that you have to have everything figured out before you can feel at peace. This belief makes life heavier than it needs to be. It creates pressure where there should be curiosity, anxiety where there should be patience, and fear where there should be trust. The truth is, nobody has everything figured out. Life is a process of learning, unlearning, adjusting, and growing. What matters isn't having all the answers. It's being open enough to keep going even when you don't. When you stop demanding perfection from yourself, you start allowing room for growth. You give yourself permission to try new things, to make mistakes, to change direction, and to evolve without shame. Life feels more forgiving because you become more forgiving with yourself. And this is where the shift toward a better life becomes truly noticeable. It's not just about stopping certain habits, it's about rediscovering your strength, your clarity, your voice. It's about realizing that you deserve a life that feels aligned, peaceful, and meaningful. You deserve mornings where you wake up without dread, moments where you feel present instead of overwhelmed, and days where you feel proud of yourself simply for trying. You may not be able to change everything at once, but you don't need to. Small steps matter. Small shifts matter. Every time you choose to release a habit that no longer serves you, you make room for a version of yourself that feels freer and more empowered. And that's what a better life is really about, feeling more connected to who you truly are, not who the world told you to be. As we wrap up this conversation, I want you to take a moment to recognize something important. You're doing better than you think. You're growing, even when it doesn't feel like it. You're learning, even when the progress is quiet. And you're allowed to take your time. You're allowed to make changes slowly. You're allowed to create a life that feels good to you, regardless of what anyone else thinks. So if any part of this resonated with you, if you recognized a habit you want to release or a shift you want to make, know that you're not alone. So many people are on this journey with you, trying to live with more intention, more clarity, and more peace. And if you feel inspired to make even one small change today, let that be enough. Those small changes add up in ways you can't imagine. If you feel comfortable, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Tell me which part spoke to you the most or what habits you're working on letting go of. Your story might inspire someone else who really needs it. And if you found this video helpful, don't forget to like it and subscribe to the channel. There's so much more coming your way, and I'd love to be part of your journey. Here's to living your best life, one step, one choice, and one gentle shift at a time. You deserve it, more than you know.